Invasive species such as this Mimosa Acacia tree are an absolute nuisance because they completely take over the area by spreading by roots, spreading by seeds. They spread more when you cut them back. They're actually illegal to plant and they're an absolute fire hazard here in Portugal. I've tried digging them out with a bulldozer and they grew back. I've cut them all back down to the ground and they grew back. And 6 years ago, I stopped those methods and started working with the tree instead of against it. And I've managed to, through an 8-year process, turn an area like this behind me to an open canopy of big mimosa trees, which are ready to plant new trees underneath to grow in the shade of them and eventually take over and have a new forest of native trees. And while we do this process, we produce lots of things for ourselves, like wood for building, firewood, biochar, and fodder for sheep. I'm Lawrence from Kila Permaculture Farm, and I hope you enjoy this video on how I manage my invasive species in Portugal. So what is an invasive species? An invasive species is a tree that basically loves it where you are and spreads and takes over. Every country has different invasive species. Mimosa is an invasive species in Portugal and is illegal to plant. However, you can buy this in England for £30 in a garden centre, plant it in England and not have a problem. Mimosa is from the legume family. This tree is a nitrogen fixer. It has these bean pod seeds and beautiful yellow flowers, and a pioneer species. In nature, pioneers grow quickly, produce biomass and nitrogen to improve the soil around them, and they have a short lifespan. So they basically grow fast, die back, and allow a new native forest to grow underneath it. What we want to do is work with this tree as a pioneer to improve the soil, create shade, to create a new forest under it, and not fight it. So we've got over a hectare of this mimosa, and we've been managing it over 8 years, but we haven't got to all of it at once. So we've got different areas at different stages of the management. So we're going to go through and show you all the different stages of the management over the years. And so the first thing to do is to thin it out. Year one would be in a scenario like this where it's overgrown. The first step would be to go through and remove anything that's dead like this, that a fire had come through here. So this was all burnt down. So we remove all of the dead that's fallen and we take that for firewood. And then we come through and remove any of the trees that are standing dead as well, like these thin pieces here. And then we with the axe, take off all the lower branches. So once we've gone through and taken out all this dry dead wood, we'll then have a slightly more fire-safe forest, but we'll also have a nice pile of firewood and kindling. And mimosa wood, or most fast-growing invasive species, are really flammable and really good for starting a fire. Not so good for keeping you warm, but really good to start a fire nice and quickly before you add your better quality firewood. So after we've come through the first time and cleared all the dead wood, we want to do the next stage. What we want to come through next is to clear out the thinner branches. So for example, here in this clump, you can see we've got one bigger tree and we've got many smaller ones. So what we want to do is come through here and take out all of the smaller ones, okay? And that will just leave the one bigger one. So once I've done that, I'll go through and take off any of the lower branches, like so. Okay, and now if we look up to the top of the canopy, you can see that the trees are touching each other still. These two trees next to each other are touching. And actually, the aim will be to remove the small ones and then look up and not have two trees' canopies meet each other. This is so that they grow outwards. What we want is the trees to grow outwards at the top rather than going too tall to fight for light, because then you have trees that eventually, when they're on their own, will blow over in the wind. With regards to what we've just cut here, what we'll do now is take each branch, cut off the ends, and these ends here with the leaves, we'll actually take these to the sheep. So we get a big pile of this when we work with Mimosa, and it's really good high protein feed for sheep, and they love it. Then the rest of the branch, we'll cut off the end bit that's thin and has many branches, and we'll pile this up and we'll burn this and put it out with water to create biochar, to create charcoal. And then with the branches that we have that are straight, we'll take off any leaves for the sheep and we'll use this for building. This is really good for making wattle and daub building, and many of our structures and internal walls are made with wattle and daub. So this tree's been cleared around, so we want to go to the next tree, and you can see here, this tree, we just need to remove a few. Take out some of these branches. So now we can see we've got two trees near each other, and what we want to create is that throughout the forest. Okay, now these two trees are actually too close together, because what we want to do is have canopies just not touching when you look up, and you can see that these are touching. But we're not going to remove one of these now. And the reason is, when you take out those small ones, it's going to encourage some regrowth. And if you take out the big one as well, it's going to create loads of new regrowth of mimosa. What we want to do is just thin it out slowly to not create too much regrowth at once. So this year, we'll just go through removing all the small ones, and you're going to leave the bigger ones with no branches lower down, even if these are really close together. And what that's going to do is make it more fire safe, because there's nothing on the ground or low branches that can catch fire. And you've got a lot of work, building work to do, or cutting these small ones into kindling. The other thing you can do with these is make wood chips if you have a wood chip machine, or make biochar. So once you've processed all of these, it's going to take you quite a long time if you've got a large area. Here's an area which we thinned out the first year's wood last year. And actually this is an area which we dug out with a bulldozer before as well and cut it all back. But now this is the second year of our new method. And what you can see is during the first year after you've thinned it out, you're going to get all this regrowth of leaves. So there are two options. One, the slow option, where you go through and rip these off like this. And that's going to take you forever, but maybe it's a nice meditation. Or my option is I bring the sheep here, and the sheep just take off all of these leaves. And you put them through here twice a year, and they don't allow the regrowth. Sometimes I miss the opportunity, and the sheep don't come here and unfortunately grow a bit taller, so I have to cut them back and take them to the sheep. Here is an example of where the sheep didn't come in soon enough, and these branches are grown quite tall. When the sheep come here, they're going to eat these leaves anyway, but we don't want this branch. So I'll come through and just get rid of all of these. Once you get to the second year, you're going to have something like this. You're going to have larger trees. Every forest looks different. Yours might all be bigger, they might all be smaller. But what you're going to have is an area without dead wood, without small branches on the ground, or low dry branches. But when you look up, all of the canopies of the trees are going to be touching each other. So what we want to do now is we want these trees to get bigger, and we want the canopies to spread at the top and not grow up. So what we want to do is come through here and thin them out by looking up. Okay, so we want to thin these trees out so that we can eventually have a nice big tree with a big canopy 20 meters apart. But we're not going to thin it out to those trees now, because you'll just get too much regrowth. So we're going to take out the minimum amount that we can from here, so the canopies don't touch above. So for example, in this area here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, say 5 trees. Out of these 5, we'll remove maybe 2 or 3. Actually, the less we remove, the better, because we get less regrowth from the bottom. Okay, and then this is going to grow over a year, and hopefully the canopies start opening, and then we thin them out further. take a look at this amount here. When you look at this, what you've actually got is a tree that was originally here and cut back, and now it has many here, okay? If you're going to thin out a section like this on any stage, first stage or second stage, you never want to remove all of it, okay? So what happens is, because this was all one tree, if you remove all of this, you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of new shoots. So the best thing to do in an area like this is take out all these little ones, maybe leave 4 that were originally here from this bunch. And then a year later, it will look like this, look something like this here, or this here, where you've got 4 only down here. Again, obviously we want to just clean off any of these small branches. But now we've got 4 here. Actually, if you look closely, this is one tree, and these 3 are another tree. So we wouldn't want to remove all of these because we'll get too much regrowth. So maybe the best thing to do is to remove this one and this one this year, so you haven't removed the whole of this tree, and allow these 2 to grow a little bit more, and then next year we'll take one of them out. We've also got 2 behind it here, and we'll thin these out to 1. So imagine if we work here now, we're going to leave this into one tree, this clump into one, this to one, and this to one, which will leave 4. But next year, perhaps that will become 2, and the year after 1. Just to remember, the concept is not thinning out too much at once. So we're here in the 3rd year of the forest, the 3rd year of maintaining the forest. And what we've actually got here is a nice space between the trees. So I can walk through it. You could even put a hammock here. And the trees are quite straight, which is good. They're not leaning towards the light. And there's no dead wood or lower branches. I haven't done any work here for a year. And there's nothing at the bottom. There's a little bit of small leaves, which the sheep will eat or have eaten. It's now time to look up at the canopy and see where they're touching, and take out the minimum amount of trees we can that stops the canopy touching at the top. And so when we do that, we will then have less trees here and allow them to open up a little bit more to disencourage them from growing so tall, so they can widen the canopy and become stronger trees that may not blow over in the wind. So after processing this little clump here, we'll get a nice bunch of firewood. We're going to get lots of leaves for the sheep, loads of charcoal, and we're going to have a nicer canopy of trees. Up here is actually, I think, the 3rd year, but we thinned it out too much. You can see quite a big space between the trees, and there was a lot of regrowth here, but the sheep came in early enough and they've eaten them all. So it did work, but I prefer to do it more slowly, especially where I have about 1 hectare of this mimosa to manage. Whenever we have a native tree growing in a mimosa forest, I clear all the way around it. Depending on what tree it is, this is a cork tree and it doesn't mind the full sun. Sometimes you have trees that like to grow in the shade, so you leave the mimosa there. But as much as possible, we want to help these native trees that are finding their way here anyway. So we're here in my 4th year of managing these mimosa, and this is a different area, and it's very difficult to manage because it's so rocky. But it's now time to thin these out, as you can see again, and we just do the same concept every year. We look up at the canopy and see what we can thin out. You can see there are thinner trees and fatter trees. So I'm going to be taking out the thinner trees and leaving the fatter ones. But in some scenarios, like here, you've got 2 fat ones really close together. But if you look up, this one's going more straight up and this one's leaning. So we're going to take out the one that's leaning, and we're going to thin this out this year to have just bigger ones where the canopy isn't touching. So this section here is probably on its 5th year, and you can see that I've got big spaces between the trees. The trees are relatively straight up and the canopies are just starting to touch again. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to thin out the trees so the canopies don't touch. Looking at this tree here, you can see there is a V shape here, and I can tell you now, one day this will get too big and split down the middle. So already for anything like this, we need to start pruning higher up, and we're going to remove one of these so that it's a safer and stronger tree. Here's an example of a tree that I've cut the bigger branches earlier that would have created a breakage in the wind. And this tree is looking lovely, and this will probably be a specimen tree here eventually. After 8 to 10 years, we're going to have a nice big canopy of mimosa trees that are going to create lots of shade here. This will be in full shade, all this hectare here. And that's when the fun is going to really start. That gives us an opportunity to plant seeds and seedlings of really good trees, native trees that take a lot longer to grow, but they need the shade of other trees to grow. These are things like pecan, walnut, chestnut, which we can't otherwise plant in our farm because there's nowhere of shade for them to grow. Any tree that grows well without shade, we're already planting. So we're going to hopefully make this actually into a walnut forest by planting walnut seeds here everywhere. And the walnut actually produces a chemical which kills other trees. So I wonder, when those walnuts grow big and can support themselves without these, and we chop them down, will that chemical prevent the mimosa from coming back? So here we have some trees that are much older, and you can see we have really big trees creating a lot of shade. And we're kind of aiming to make our mimosa forest full of big trees like these. The only problem is these are too close together, and you can see they're leaning towards the sun. So we need to make sure that when we're working on our annual management of our invasive species, we keep thinning them out so they're always growing straight and they don't have canopies touching, so that this doesn't happen. They don't lean over to the side, which means by the time they get to this size, they should have about 20 meters in between each one. So our plan is to make the whole mimosa forest we have all the way around here full of big trees like this that are 20 meters apart and that aren't at risk of falling down in the wind. What I need to do here now is remove the bigger branches at the top that are leaning in the direction where it's leaning to reduce the weight of the tree. And then I might even just chop the tree down at about 4 meters high or 3 meters high to just let it be a bit stronger lower down and regrow from the top. Unfortunately, I've been meaning to do that to these trees for some time, but it is a difficult job, and I've been putting it off and working on the smaller trees. I knew they were going to blow down, and they did. Here 2 trees blew down, and we started cleaning them up. And you could tell these were going to blow down because they were leaning to one side and had V-shaped branches coming out low down. So this could have been managed better by me managing it better from the beginning, but I didn't know then, and also by me cleaning these trees when they obviously needed it. But we now have realized what to do, and the main thing is to work every single year, thin out the trees so the canopies don't touch, always remove as little as possible so there's not too much regrowth. Make sure the sheep come through to eat all the greens, and take advantage of all of the yield you get from doing this, and enjoy a glass of wine with the firewood that you've made from this around a fire with friends. Thank you for watching this video on mimosa. If you have any questions or comments, please put them below. And if you enjoyed the video, please remember to subscribe. And also we have another video on how we manage eucalyptus that you could watch as well.